Hello and welcome to a new video. This video is for Algebra 1 and we are starting a new unit, Unit 2, Graphing Linear Equations. And this is just going to be the very first lesson. We're going to basically start the process of learning what it means to graph and just everything that has to do with graphing. This is our starting point. I'm really excited about it and I hope you get excited about it too. If you're like, wait, Unit 2 of what? This is my own curriculum of my own design, and you can go to the link in the description and check it out for yourself if you'd like to. While you're there, you can download a free notes page to let you follow along with these notes. That's going to be super helpful for this lesson in particular because we're graphing and we're going to have some coordinate planes to graph on, and so that way you don't have to make your own coordinate planes, you can just use mine. So let's get started with an introduction to the coordinate plane. This lesson has a lot of vocabulary. Some you may be familiar with, some might be new. So first off, I want to talk about what do we even mean when we talk about having a graph in math. If you have encountered the word graph in real life, someplace other than your math class, it's probably been in relationship to graphics, right? So graphics are things that we visualize, and so those have the same kind of roots to their words, right? So a graph in math is just talking about a visual representation of information. And starting in Algebra 1 or pre-algebra maybe, when we talk about graphing, we actually are talking about a very specific math thing that we do. Because before now, and really, I mean, you could still end up seeing graphs like this, but before now when you've seen graphs, you might have done something like bar graphs, line graphs, those kind of graphs that show information like based on statistics. So things like, you know, whose favorite color, who has what favorite color you might have done in a class, and then graphed it on a bar graph to show the differences. So we have that kind of graph, but then once we start talking about algebra, we have kind of this other kind of graph, and we use similar language and similar things so that whenever I, as a mathematician, am talking to some other mathematician, we have the same ideas going on. We don't have to first start and say, okay, what do you mean when you say graph? We kind of know that we mean the same thing. So that's one of our things that's kind of vocabulary. A graph is just a visual representation of our information. What we've done before now in this Algebra 1 series is we've talked about equations and solving them, but none of that has been a visual representation of what's been going on. What we've done so far would be classified as algebraic because we are using the rules of algebra to solve something. What we're going to do in this unit is called doing things graphically because we're going to show a visual representation of it. So that's kind of a distinction that happens, that you might actually see those words at some point in your especially in Algebra 2 or pre-calculus, you might see those words because they might specify, I want you to do this algebraically, or I want you to do this graphically. Okay, let's look at some more vocab. Okay, so the coordinate plane is what I have pictured here. Okay, it is made up of different things. There's some vocabulary we're going to go over to make sure we understand it. But if somebody asks you to graph something on a coordinate plane, this is the visual that we should have in our head for graphing on a coordinate plane. It is also called a Cartesian plane, which is named after the guy who came up with it or something. His name was Descartes. It's called the Cartesian plane or the coordinate plane. So what are the parts of this coordinate plane? Well, first off, we've got grid lines, and I say this is vocabulary, but this is really just more because we need to understand each other. These grid lines do not have to be there. This is making it kind of look like graph paper, which, by the way, is super helpful to have if you're graphing. It's so that it's easier to tell if you are trying to put something on your graph. It's easier to tell where it is. If I take out the grid lines and just have like blank space, it would be a lot harder to be precise. Keep that in the back of your head that if I say something about grid lines, that's what I'm talking about, is these kind of grayish lines that are showing where is 1, where is 2, where is 3, and so on. So the coordinate plane is made up of two lines. So ignoring the grid lines, we've got two lines, a vertical line and a horizontal line. Those words are important for us to know as well. Vertical is straight up and down, horizontal is this way. The way I learned how to remember it is that a horizontal line goes this way, just like if you're looking out onto the horizon, maybe at sunset or some peaceful moment. This is the horizontal direction. This is the vertical direction. But we call those something. We call them I don't know the plural. I've never actually figured out how to say the plural. We have an x-axis and a y-axis. So the word axis in general it's kind of referring to something like that's a line. So we have the x-axis and the y-axis. And I'm going to label those on here. And I would encourage you to label them on yours as well. The x-axis is the horizontal axis, which, by the way, looks a lot like a number line, which you've probably used before now in math. So this horizontal line is called the x-axis. The vertical axis is called the y-axis. And sometimes you'll have coordinate planes on like worksheets and things like that that will actually label those with an x and a y. Other times you won't, and it's up to you to remember. This is something that stays the same no matter what. That these are the x and the y axis when we're graphing in algebra. So it's not like you need to be worried that somebody's switching it up on you. One way you can think of to remember the y-axis is, or which one is which, is that if you think about a y going down and having a tail and relate that to the fact that it's vertical, that's again how I initially remembered it when I was a kid. So we've got the x and the y-axis. We have where they meet in the middle, which is right here. This point is called the origin. And origin in general means the starting point, right? So if we think about the way we could represent real things on a coordinate plane like this, the origin is talking about where we would start because it is at 0 for x and it's at 0 for y, which you might be able to tell because of it having a 0 and a 0 down there. So we have this point that starts at 0 for both x and y, and then all of our other points go out in either direction from there. So it's called the origin. We also have what we call quadrants. Don't think quadrants is a word that's used a lot in real life. I think if anything, they typically come up in sci-fi or something that we might talk about the quadrants of a spaceship or something. I don't even know. But quadrants, the coordinate plane is divided into 4 quadrants. It's kind of funny initially looking at how they are labeled. For one thing, a lot of times we use Roman numerals to label them, and I don't know why that is. But also just it may not be obvious to you which quadrant is which. We label them as 1, 2, 3, 4, and we start actually in the top right and we go around counterclockwise. So starting up here in the top right, this is quadrant 1. And we could either use the number 1 or, like I said, you'll see Roman numerals a lot. So the Roman numeral for 1 looks like an I. Over here to the left of that, at the top left, this is quadrant 2. And then down at the bottom left is quadrant 3. And then bottom right is quadrant 4. Now, why is this helpful? Sometimes it would be nice if we had a way to talk about, there's definitely times where it would be nice if we were talking about where something is on a graph, where we'd have similar language that we would all know is the same. So we could be talking about what our graph looks like, and we could say, well, this is what's happening in quadrant 1. And that would tell everybody that you're talking to that, okay, we're looking at the top right. If you're like, why in the world is it labeled this way and not some other way? I don't know who decided part of this originally, but when we start talking about angles on the coordinate plane, 0 ends up being here on the positive x-axis, and we actually go this direction as we're measuring angles. And this is not super important for you to understand right now or even to remember. It's just there is a reason why they're labeled this way, why quadrant 1 is up there. And also, by the way, quadrant 1 is where things are positive. So if you look at the x-axis, to the right is positive, the y-axis up above is positive. So quadrant 1 also is where we have all of our positive x and y values. So I think that's the other reason why it gets to be quadrant 1. So that's quadrants. Now let's talk about points. So we graph a variety of things on our coordinate planes, but one of the things we can graph, and the thing we're going to start off with today, we call them points. A point is just basically a dot, and that dot is meant to represent a spot somewhere. And points themselves don't actually have a size, it's just that we want to show that we're representing something. So like right here, and most of our points, we don't have to put points on the grid lines, it's just that it's nicer to work with whole numbers and integers, so that's why I'm going to mostly put them on grid lines. So here we have a point in quadrant 1 that I'm representing with a dot. This point, in order for us to talk about the same point and understand where it's at, we have an x-coordinate and we have a y-coordinate. So what we do is we think about on the x-axis, where is this grid line that intersects with the point? Intersects is a word that means, it hits or comes in contact with. If you intersect your brother whenever you're playing tag, you would tag him because you'd run into him. Hopefully you'd both be okay. All right, so this x value here for this point is positive 4. Because on the x-axis, we're at 4. Compared to the x-axis, we are at 4. The y value, or y-coordinate for this, is actually also positive 4. Because where we are vertically for this point is we are up 4 from the origin. So that's our y-coordinate. Together, those two pieces of information, the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate, let us write this as what is called an ordered pair. So an ordered pair has parentheses and a comma, and that comma is separating two values, the x value and the y value. So it's important, again, this does not change. X value comes first, y value comes second. If you want to remember that it is in alphabetical order. Coincidence maybe, but there it is. It's in alphabetical order. X comes first, just like it does in the alphabet. So this point that I've got drawn, we could say is the ordered pair 4, 4. And when we first encounter this can totally be something that is confusing, that takes some effort to remember. But once we have dealt with this for a while, there will be a point, hopefully, not too far down the road, where when you see something in parentheses like this separated by a comma and you have two numbers, you'll be like, okay, I know what that is. That's a point. Somebody's telling me about a point that has a certain value for x and a certain value for y. And so that's one of the cool things about math, is that we have like different languages in the world. Math is kind of its own language, but we have similarities, right, that we can talk to other people. We may not even know the same language, but we might be able to communicate with them about this point because we have similar notation. So that's really cool. All right, we're just going to do a couple things example-wise, because really the heart of this was just introducing us to the idea of graphing and what it means and vocab, but we are going to go ahead and talk about graphing points on the coordinate plane. So we've got points here on this graph. Like I said, super helpful to download this notes page and print it out and follow along. So if you didn't do that already, this would be the time to go do that, so that you have this graph right on your paper and don't have to recreate it yourself. So all of these are labeled. We've got A, B, C, D, E, and F. That is something that we will do sometimes, is we'll label our points either with letters or with their actual coordinates, just so that people can see where they are, that kind of thing. But this also helps us so that I can say we're talking about A right now and you know which one I'm talking about. So we are going to write down these ordered pairs. So we are going to look for where are these in relation to the x-axis and where are these in relation to the y-axis. And so the reason it's called an ordered pair, by the way, is because the order matters. We always put the x value first, we put the y value second. So let's give this a try. And at some point you might decide, okay, I think I've got this, pause the video, try it yourself, and then start it up and see if you're right. Because I don't have like a specific now you try for this, although I am going to show you how you can do a bunch of practice on graphing points. All right, we are going to look at A, which is our green dot down here, and I'm going to use, is there a color here? I'm going to use red just because, none, oh, that dot is red. It looked orange whenever I said that. I'm going to go back to using orange. All right, let's look at A, which is this green dot here. So first we look at our left to right because we look at the x-axis first. So from the origin, this green dot is over to the left 3 places, which means that our x-coordinate is at -3. So I'm going to write open parentheses -3, comma, and then I'm going to look at the y value. Y is up and down. So I'm going to say, well, this is up 1 from the origin, right? I'd have to go up 1 to get here. We're essentially like following this back down along these grid lines and following it right to see what number these are at. Okay, so it's a y coordinate of 1. So this ordered pair is -3, comma 1. That's what point A is. Let's do point B, which is this purple point down here. So let's look at the left and the right. This one also goes left to -2. So here goes left to -2. So that's the first part of my point. And then we look at the up and down. So we look at the up and down. So it looks like this is down to -4 on the y-axis. So our answer is -2, comma, -4. Let's look at C. This one we have to go to the right. So we go to the right here. I'm having trouble with which line I'm drawing for which situation, so I'm just going to draw them both. We had to go to the right one to get to C. We also have to go down 1 to get to C. So the x-coordinate is 1, the y-coordinate is -1. So our, ooh, almost messed that up. So our point is 1, comma, -1. Okay, D, this pink dot over here. We've got we have to go over all the way here to +4. So that's our x value is at 4. But we actually don't go up or down at all, right? So this is actually at 0 for y. So this is 4, comma, 0. Well, let's look at E. So like I said, I'm going to draw these lines first. And you don't have to draw these lines. This is me trying to emphasize it so that you can see what's going on. This is left and right. We would go right to a +2, and we go up to +4. So our answer is 2, comma, 4. Part F, or point F, which is this yellow point here, is on the y-axis. We do not have to go left or right. In fact, if we go left or right, we won't be talking about F, right? So our x-coordinate here is 0, but our y-coordinate is not because we did go up 3, so our y-coordinate is a +3. So this actually has given us like a perspective on, okay, here are points, and now I have the understanding of how the coordinates happen. And now we're going to do it actually the other way around. We're going to take coordinates and we're going to put them on the coordinate plane. Okay, so we're doing the opposite now. We have coordinates. We're going to put them on our graph. We're going to label them with whatever the letter is so that we can keep track later whenever we're looking at it. But this is called plotting, by the way. That when you plot something on a graph, you're placing it on that graph. So we're going to plot and label these ordered pairs in our coordinate plane. Remember that it's x comma y, and then since I already have this coordinate plane labeled with numbers, I can pretty easily see that, okay, to the right is positive and up is positive, and then negative are the other two directions. Let's graph A, which is 0, comma, -3. Now, since it says 0 for the first value, I am not going to go left or right at all. Then it says -3 for the y value, so I'm going to go down to -3 on the y-axis. And here is point A. Right there. B. If you at some point feel like you've got the hang of this, please pause and try these ahead of me and then start it back up and see if you're right. B, -1, comma, -5. So we are going to go to the left 1 because our x value is -1. And then we're going to go down 5 because our y value is -5. So right here is B. C, -4, 1. So we're going to go left 4 because it's -4. And then we're going to go up 1 because it's +1. Here is our point C. D, we're going to do 3, 4. So I'm going to go right 3. Oh. So I'm going to go right 3, and I'm going to go up 4. And here is my point. Even with the best intentions, it's really easy to look at these and write and do them backwards. So you, especially right now while you're practicing, you've got to be super diligent about checking your answers and just saying, okay, did I do the x value first? Did I do the left and right and then the up and down? So E is 2, -1. So we're going to go right 2, we're going to go down 1, and label that with an E. So that's how we plot these points. So instead of having a ton of practice on the notes, I have what I think is even better. One of the things that I want to do on my website is have ways for you to practice where you can get as many problems as you want, and they all have the answers so that you can check them right away. Because I think that's really how we learn math best, is by trying and seeing if we're right or not, and then adjusting our assumptions based on whether we were right or wrong. So I'm going to have this link in the description. We've got this graphing points practice page. Probably once you see it, this video actually will be up above. That's my plan, is this video would be up above, and then this is the next thing on the page. It says, welcome to graphing points practice. Click the box to begin. The box it's referring to is new problem. What it does is it brings up a coordinate plane, and it says, click the graph where the point should be, and then click show answer to see if you're correct. So I don't yet have a way to like make it tell you if you're correct or not, but I think it's pretty straightforward, you being able to tell. So if I go to the point -7, 3, and this is not going to work as well on a phone or tablet, especially a phone. The smaller the screen, the harder this will be to be precise, but I'm taking my mouse and going -7, 3, and I'm going to click right here. And it will let you click multiple times. So here's the point that matters. I want to show answer, and so it's going to show me where the answer is, and if it's right on top of that point I drew, then I'm like, hey, I got it right. And if it's not right on top, then I know I got it wrong. So show answer. See, that red dot right there is exactly, almost exactly where I put my dot. So yes, I got it right. We can clear the graph if we mess up. Like let's say you graphed it over here and realized that you graphed it in the wrong spot. There's a clear graph button. And then there's this new problem button. So you click new problem, 1, 8. If you just had no idea where it is, you can click show answer right off the bat. Again, we can clear our answer. But you can do this and get as much practice as you want. You can just keep on clicking and keep on clicking. And just click where you think it is, click show answer. So see how I didn't quite get that lined up on the grid lines? That's something that like you would be able to judge and say, okay, well that's where I meant for it to be, so I'm still right. But you can keep track then. You don't have to do a ton of worksheets. You can just say, I'm going to go ahead and do some practice on this website, and then once I've got that where I feel like I've got the hang of it, then go sit down with some paper and a pencil and do some problems. It's important to be able to do both. If you can do something through practice on the computer, great. But we do still use paper and pencil enough that it's important that you can also prove that you can do it paper and pencil wise. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll check out my website to check out that graphing app that I showed you, or subscribe to my channel. That'd be super cool. Give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and leave a comment if you'd like, telling me what your favorite color is, or how you're doing, or things like that. I'd love to hear from you. But thanks so much for watching. Bye.